Hey guys, how you doing? For today's video, I was thinking we could go over some more common mistakes by newer players to DCS in terms of air-to-air combat. Things that I wish I knew when I first started playing DCS. It's just going to be a few tips that I think will dramatically increase your skill level as a pilot, whether you're flying against AI or other players. I think it'll get you up to a competent level. You'll be able to actually put up a fight when it comes to air-to-air combat with this a couple of these techniques we're going to talk about here today. Today I have Frosty here for the video. He's been playing DCS for probably a couple months now, so he's basically the perfect candidate for what we're looking for here. So yeah guys, let's go ahead and get started. Alright, let's put the EW screen on, dispenser set to bypass, and set up the radar here. We'll push it up to 80. There he is. Go ahead and lock him up. Excellent. So there he is at about 42 miles. 41 miles. Alright, so he has me locked up. This is way too far to shoot, even though you have the shoot cue. "32 miles. Okay, he fired at me. I'm cranking to the left. Look at my radar screen there. I'm going to push it to the gimbal limits. Put him right on the edge there. There we go. Alright, I'm now dragging his missile to the left and bleeding off his energy. We're going to maintain this for a little bit. You just gotta keep your cool even though that tone is going, because he fired that missile from pretty far away. So, alright, now we're gonna turn back in, fire the missile. When we get the shoot cue at 15 miles, invert and dive. That's Fox 3. And here we go. We're gonna start diving for the ground. Alright, and we're just going to pop some flares just in case he fired off an ET or something. And just dive, dragging that missile down into the dense air. I'm pretty sure I would have splashed him by now, so... Altitude. That RWR is gone, so... I'm pretty sure he's gone. Yeah. There's some stuff falling out of the sky back there. Alright, let's go ahead and check out the TAC view now. Alright, so here we go. Frosty's carrying one R27ER. He's carrying 127 ET, 277s, and his heat seekers. Alright, so he's got one long range ER, or Fox 1 if you will, and I'm carrying my Fox 3s. In the form of the AMRAAMs 120Cs. Alright, so what we're gonna do is just close on each other here, and right around 30 nautical miles Frosty's gonna fire off his first missile. Alright, now he's essentially wasted his first missile, and it just so happens to be his best one, his 27 ER. Okay, and the reason I say he's wasted it is because it's very easy to defeat. He's more than likely fired it at the maximum range. Okay, he's about 31,000 feet, so this was probably when his radar said he could fire it. And the reason I say it's wasted is because, like, look at this, a simple crank. Okay, now for those of you that don't know what a crank is, it's generally a 45-degree pull to the right or to the right, to the left or to the right, and what that's going to do is drag the missile off to one side. Now the important thing with pulling a crank is maintaining the lock. So you want to push him off to the gimbal limits of the radar to basically put him right at the edge of where your radar can continue to pick him up. So here Frosty has fired off his missile. You can see it already pulling off to one side. And most missiles in DCS are going to be flying a lead pursuit, which means it's going to try to hit, it's going to lead in front of me, and it's going to try to hit me right around here somewhere. Okay. Now what that means is that the missiles are going to have to pull even further ahead than I'm already cranked. And this turn here is going to bleed energy. Anytime that something turns in the sky, it bleeds energy. If you have an aircraft and you don't add speed as you turn, you will lose speed, right? You need to add throttle as you make a turn, you pull G's. The missile is the same way. If it turns, it will bleed energy. The only thing that differentiates a missile is that the fact that it has a very limited burn in terms of fuel. Okay, so every DCS missiles range from anywhere from 6 to 11 to 15 seconds, with the exception of the Phoenix missile, which burns for about 30 seconds. So once that burn is gone, that missile has all the energy it was ever going to have, and it has to use that energy to get to the target. If you can bleed some of that energy by forcing it to take turns, okay, that missile, by the time it gets to you, is not going to have enough energy to hit you. Okay, so that's why you want to do the crank, because you're forcing the missile, instead of just coming straight at you, you're forcing it to take a turn to one direction, bleed energy. All right. So that's what I've done here, and it's going to be very easy, especially at the maximum range of this missile, to bleed off its energy. The other thing with the crank is, because you're not headed right at him, what you're doing is decreasing your closure rate. And what that means is that missile is going to be airborne longer before it can reach you. That's another thing that you're doing. And the longer you can keep the missile airborne, obviously the longer the energy has to bleed off of it. So the more you can keep that missile airborne, the more likely you are to defeat it. Alright, so that's basically what is going on here. So this is why I say he's wasted the first missile, based on the range that he fired it, and like I said, it was his best missile, right? So he's already basically scrapped that thing. So you can see it's around Mach 1.5, and then you're going to see me crank back around, and I essentially pull an F pull here. So watch as I turn, that missile is forced to turn again. Alright, so now it has to recalculate the lead, and so at first, it was calculating that it was going to hit me here. Now I'm turning this way, so the missile's like, okay, I gotta hit him here now, right? So it's trying to turn, and it just isn't gonna have the energy to make that happen, right? Look at the energy state of the missile at this point. It's Mach 1.1. Alright, so you're basically forcing the missile to take turn after turn, and there's no way at that range that missile is going to be able to do that. Now, I basically pull it around. I'm going to fire off my Fox 3, okay, Mach 3.3, and I'm immediately going to nose down. I'm going to drag whatever other missile he's fired down into the density of, into lower altitude, into higher density air, okay, and that means that it's going to create friction for the missile as it tries to follow me down. Alright, now you see me popping some flares here. This is generally just because when you fight those Russian aircraft, you never know when there's an ET coming at you, so it's good policy to drop some flares just in case. in case he fired one, you didn't see it. Now he's fired a 77. This is far outside of range. If his expectation was to send me defensive with this first missile, which is more than likely why he fired it, he should have fired his 77 as his first missile, because it wouldn't have reached me anyway, but I wouldn't have been able to differentiate between a 77 and an ER on my radar. I would have assumed it was his ER, right? So he should have sent the 77, kept the ER for when we were closer range, which is a much faster and longer range missile. He would have been able to use it better if he kept it a little bit. Now, as that missile comes in, let's watch Frosty's defensive maneuvers here. Notice how he's not decreasing his altitude, right? He's not doing the vertical dive all the way down. So what that means is he's staying at low density air, which means that my missile doesn't have to fight increasing amounts of friction to hit him. Alright, his missiles have already been defeated. Look at that, Mach 0.8. That 77 is never going to reach me. And this missile is coming in right at Frosty here. Okay. There's that ET. He again waited way too long to fire that. But this is why you kind of want to be scared of those Russian aircraft, right? They just randomly launch these ETs that might hit you. And for those of you that don't know, because it's an IR missile, the 27 ET, you do not receive an RWR warning for it. That's why it's especially dangerous. So Frosty in this situation, he does not crank, he does not decrease his altitude. He's too focused on his kill. Alright, you want to fire that missile and then remember your defensive maneuvers. Okay, so as soon as I launched that AMRAAM at him, what he should have done was crank this way, or crank this way, it doesn't matter. Maybe turn in, continue to crank, and basically what he's doing is constantly forcing the missile to recalculate where it's going to hit him, and it's going to bleed off the energy of that missile. Alright, so he doesn't do any of that cranking or anything like that. The other thing he could have done, which we discussed, was pulling the missile down into denser air. Okay, and also he could have combined these two things, and he could have done left and right cranks while decreasing altitude. Right, so he would have been dragging the missile left and right, and pushing it into denser air. He more than likely would have been able to defeat it. A better policy at this range, because I fired that AMRAAM at him pretty close, I think it was. That missile came in at about 15 nautical miles, so that's pretty good for an AMRAAM in terms of range when the altitude is 29 and 27,000 feet. Alright, so that missile had a pretty high probability of kill, and you can also tell from the speed at which it was about to hit him. Alright, look at that, Mach 2.8. What he should have done, what I would have done if I was him in this situation, was forget about the cranking, and I would have just dove straight down 90 degrees. Defeat the first missile and then recommit. It becomes a battle of who can recommit faster as to who will win. You should always be able to defeat the first missile the guy fires at you, especially if you had the first launch. Okay, essentially what happens here is Frosty does not go defensive. He doesn't crank. He doesn't go for his vertical notch here, and that's fine because he's focused on this. He's trying to get his target, he's trying to get his kill, and he's hoping that he's got more time. That's the thing with the newer players, especially myself when I first started. I thought I had more time. When that missile gets fired at you, you don't realize how fast Mach 3.3, Mach 4 is. It's tremendously fast. You only have a few seconds of reaction time. Okay, so right after you fire your missile, you should be going defensive. Assume that a missile has been fired at you. Even American aircraft, they have TWS mode, which means more than likely there is an AMRAAM coming at you, you just don't know it yet. And the Hornet doesn't have that just yet, so it's a little different with the Hornet, but it will eventually. And when it does, you have to make those assumptions. So because Frosty's too focused on his kill here, he's gonna get himself he got himself killed here. He did fire off an ET, which again is not going to be able to hit me. I've dragged that missile down. Those first 2 missiles that he fired, those have been dragged down into dense air, nor do they have the energy to even catch up with me. Right, look at this, Mach 1.1, and I'm already Mach 1.2. Alright, that missile's completely garbage, and the ET, even though it seems like it's got a lot of energy, is never going to be able to catch up. It does end, but look at that, Mach 0.7. It was never going to hit me. Alright, so those are generally the mistakes that I see a lot of, you know, newer players doing, which is fine. You know, I did them too, and you learn. And this, the only way to learn is to do these things. Go back, look at your TAC view, and learn from your mistakes. Right. So I hope this may have helped some newer players. I hope that Frosty maybe got something out of this. I know that this kind of thing would have been immensely valuable to me when I first started playing DCS. I would have loved to get this kind of information, have somebody tell me what I did wrong. So that's why, you know, we make these videos, and I'm grateful for Frosty for coming on and, you know, putting himself up to this, and basically letting me critique his style. I appreciate that. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, at least found it entertaining. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.